I didn't try any drugs into my early 20s because no one would sell them to me. I was very anti-drug in high school, to the point where in my freshman year homeroom class, I chose, not assigned, an anti-drug presentation. And I had a big trifold poster with my slogan up top, "Do life, not drugs." Then there were pictures of people windsurfing and rock climbing and snowboarding. Now that I'm older, I know that all of those people love to do drugs. It doesn't go both ways, though, does it? You go to the beach, guy with a surfboard under his arm, like, that guy likes to get high for sure. If I go to a party, guy does a line of coke off the table, I'm not like, I bet he knows how to hang glide.
Good morning. It's Friday, Policecraft Friday, January the 19th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we'll have news shorts, military shorts, motivation, and something new, aviation shorts. Then Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 Strategies of War, and we will pick up where we left off on policecraft. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I shouldn't change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, the news shorts.
I think Jay Powell's going to watch the data. And based on the data, Jay Powell will make decisions. The market's clearly running ahead to a position of many cuts. There's no question we've made a lot of progress on inflation. Depending on how the progress, moves from here, that'll spell the direction of policy. I think it's hard for me to see the market's view of 7 cuts, this year. I do think there's a reasonable possibility of some interest rate cuts and some easing. But it's really going to be dependent on what the data says and how the economy transmits through the year. I see some signs of softness, which would lead you to believe that we're going to see some cuts. But there's a lot going on in the world, and I know you're talking about geopolitics, et cetera, and all of this, can create 0% balances.
0% chance of hikes?
I don't say 0% to anything, but it feels like at this point a bunch of work's done where the chance of hikes is a much smaller distribution than we would have thought, 6 months ago.
Since you are a Twitter user, I should ask, and you're on there all the time, what do you think?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I'm excited. Elon Musk is the bravest, most creative person on the planet. I mean, what he's done in multiple areas is phenomenal. His style is different than I'm trying to be a really steady, respectable leader. He doesn't care. He's just out there, But think of a guy who's spending $44 billion. He could have built a mile-long yacht for $44 billion. Okay? But it's not good for the planet. So he's not interested. He's in for.
Do you think what he's doing is good for the planet?
Absolutely. I'm 100% convinced that he is trying to help the world in all of his endeavors. Okay, and he's trying to help the world on that one because he believes in free speech and there's power for democracy and that there's an option. Now, how he goes about it, again, is not how I would do it. But I'm deeply respectful, and I'm amazed that people are so nitpicky on.
And while we remain committed that we are definitely in a bull market, we are not unaware that the tape has gotten so frothy that on one story about United Health having some cost issues with voluntary elective surgery, the stock of Humana, a great company, has fallen 13%. That's a notable sign. That's a wake-up call. It's a sign that the conviction on this move up is not nearly as deep as you think it is. Consequently, our bias has been to sell. And believe me, I would like to sell more than we have, but the selling's taken our cash position down to about 8.85%, or $247,000, which is pretty darn hefty. It's high, given that we aren't negative on the long term. You see, when it hurts to do something, historically, that means it's the right thing to do.
Investors cracking the Fed code are listening for key phrases like
softening of labor market conditions,
or
we expect to maintain an accommodative stance of monetary policy until these outcomes, including maximum employment, are achieved.
If you notice what Powell said during the pandemic, we're not even thinking about raising interest rates. That's forward guidance. When the Fed says
we're buying 120 billion in securities per month across the Treasury curve, that's also adding to accommodation.
That's forward guidance. It's a very powerful tool.
Some of the most potent Fed statements are about the future path of short-term interest rates.
The Fed sets the interest rate that it pays on reserves held by banks, sort of the same way your bank sets the rate it pays on on deposits.
There's this connection between short-term interest rates that are closely connected to monetary policy and the interest rates on mortgages, auto loans, things like this, that would be more relevant to household decisions.
This is AP News Minute. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is rejecting U.S. calls to scale back his country's offensive in the Gaza Strip. He said Israel will keep fighting until it destroys the Hamas militant group. He also rejected the idea of a Palestinian state. The White House immediately rebuked his comments. U.S. forces on Thursday launched a fifth strike against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. President Biden acknowledged the strikes have not stopped the Houthis from attacking ships in the Red Sea. Both houses of the U.S. Congress passed a short-term spending bill and sent it to President Biden. It will keep the government open until March. Frigid winter weather, snow, and ice are blamed for more than 40 deaths across the U.S., but no one was hurt when a plane slid off a snowy taxiway in Rochester, New York. Jennifer King, The Associated Press, with AP News Minute.
Well, President Biden's administration announcing more debt cancellation for thousands of student loan borrowers. President Biden approved student debt cancellation for 74,000 borrowers. This brings the total number of borrowers with canceled debt under this administration to 3.7 million. The president says 44,000 of the borrowers approved for debt relief have at least 10 years of public service experience. The administration is working on alternative paths for debt relief since the Supreme Court struck down his previous plan last year.
We have heard some stories about airfares starting to come down a little bit. How would you assess where they are and where they may go? For the person who's going to buy that ticket internationally this summer, what are they going to find?
I think they're stabilizing. I wouldn't say they're down. They're flatlining. Because they were on a rocket ship.
Oh, they sure were.
Because the demand was so strong and the supply was limited. We now have the right supply back into the market. We're actually flying more to Europe today than we were pre-COVID. And so with that extra supply that's in the market, that's caused a stabilization in the fares.
Is this product always going to be a niche, or is this product actually critical to the world's second biggest company?
I think a lot of these developers, the names you just listed that aren't on the Vision Pro when it launches, are really taking a wait-and-see approach here because Apple hasn't said this publicly, but the rumor that we're hearing and others is that they're going to make very few of these in year one, less than 1 million, which is nothing for Apple. They're really tiptoeing into this category. It is a big deal for them. I mean, Apple doesn't put out new product categories like this very often. The last one was the Apple Watch back in like 2015. So this doesn't happen often from Apple. And the Vision Pro it's a difficult product to sell because you have to try it. And they do need this content. But this year this is a glorified developer kit. They're really just pitching this for early adopters, people who are really enthusiastic. So I'm actually not surprised to see a lot of these big companies kind of sit on the sidelines.
Ignition, engine full power, and liftoff. Go active
3. Further beyond. Opening the door for more to follow. Godspeed AX3.
Stage 1 propulsion phenomenal.
Of course, if you are just joining us, this is the launch of the Axiom 3 launch to the International Space Station. Those incredible views on your screen, and there's our first shot of the AX3 crew inside Dragon on ascent. Now, in just a few seconds here, we should hear the call out that Falcon 9...
power and telemetry. Stage 1 throttle down.
There's that call out that Falcon 9's engines are throttling down to help us pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure during ascent.
Max Q.
Does everybody just have a really thin skin now? They don't like to be talked to in some way that you talk to them? Perhaps that you're just too tough or what?
David, I wake up every day. I'm focused on our clients. I'm focused on our people. I talk to our colleagues, constantly. The caricature that's been painted is not one that I recognize. We're focused on running the firm. We're focused on serving our clients. We're focused on growing our business. We're focused on delivering for shareholders. And at the end of the day, that's what we're spending our time on.
Right.
I understand why this is interesting and attractive in the media world.
Well, this is the only time you're going to have to talk about it with me.
Okay,
but I figure
I understand why it's interesting and attractive to the media, but it's not what the people at Goldman Sachs are focused on.
And that was the news shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the military shorts.
Did you know in the film Flight of the Intruder, there is a notable scene near the end where the phonetic alphabet phrase Alpha Mike Foxtrot is spoken over the radio?
Alpha Mike Foxtrot.
This phrase holds a hidden meaning that may not be immediately apparent to all viewers. Alpha Mike Foxtrot is actually a clever abbreviation for adios. a phrase used by downed air crews when they are faced with the grim realization that death or capture is imminent. This abbreviation is part of a long-standing tradition among military personnel, where the phonetic alphabet is creatively repurposed to convey more colorful or emotionally charged messages in situations of extreme stress or danger. The use of such code words or phrases serves not only as a form of dark humor or defiance in the face of adversity, but also as a means of communication that is less likely to be intercepted or understood by enemy forces.
Your unit started with 335 Marines and left with only 18 from Iwo Jima.
In my company.
You were the only surviving flamethrower from the unit. Yep. You didn't sleep, brush your teeth, change your socks for 6 weeks.
When we got back and started training again with new men, I taught the flamethrower. I was the only one that taught the flamethrower. I couldn't get these kids to pick it up. They wouldn't put it on. For some reason or other, the lieutenants were standing right there, the platoon leaders, and they wouldn't say anything. So there's something about it that you can't force a man to use something like that. He has to want to do it, because they banned it there,
I know they did.
Banned it,
In fact, I was actually going to bring that up in the interview. Do you know what they would do to a guy like me if I used a flamethrower in combat today? Hillary Clinton is one of the most disgusting human beings on the planet.
Very much so.
Always has been, always will be, and will be inserting clips on her response to Benghazi several times throughout the interview. I want to show who she is.
She's worse than her husband.
A lot of people say that this was triggered by a YouTube video. This is her statement. I condemn in the strongest terms the attack on our mission in Benghazi today. The United States deplores any intentional effort to denigrate the religious beliefs of others. Our commitment to religious tolerance goes back to the very beginning of our nation. But let me be clear, there's never any justification for violence acts of this kind. So she's making an apology.
She was serving as an army nurse in the Philippines when she was taken prisoner by the Japanese army only 3 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. She was sent to the Santo Tomas internment camp in Manila, where she provided medical attention to other prisoners and smuggled food to those who needed it. She was Army Nurse Ruby Bradley, and by the time the camp was liberated in February 1945, she weighed only 81 pounds, having given most of her daily rations to the children in the camp. The other POWs called her an angel in fatigues. After the war, Bradley continued her career in the Army, serving in a MASH unit in Korea and eventually being promoted to the rank of colonel before retiring in 1963. Throughout her career, she received a total of 34 medals, decorations, and awards, including the Bronze Star, making her one of the most decorated women in U.S. history. Ruby Bradley lived to be 94 and now rests in Arlington National Cemetery.
There are two things that almost nobody knows about the F-22 Raptor. Known as the best stealth fighter jet in the entire world, the F-22 boasts an insanely low radar cross-section of nearly 1/10,000th square meters, equivalent to the size of a bumblebee. This is only possible due to the F-22's design being carefully made with stealth in mind, and that includes its unique golden canopy. Constructed from dual layers of polycarbonate pressed between optical glass, the canopy has a specialized metallic coating made of indium tin oxide. The golden hue that you see allows the Raptor to deflect and scatter incoming radar waves. But that's not all. Since the F-22 needs to use and run powerful computers, it has a liquid cooling system. However, this isn't a special liquid or just water. It actually uses fuel as the coolant. Since the temperatures at 50,000 feet are cold, the fuel is already cold before it is used for the engine. The F-35 also has a similar system that it is looking to upgrade.
The first time I saw real terrorists in person was January 30th. I spotted a guy on a corner and, been shot at, but it's like the first terrorist I put eyes on. The guy's mean-mugging us from a corner about maybe 150 meters out, and the look in his eyes was just pure hatred. I'd never seen hatred that I could feel like that from that distance. And I remember I wanted to shoot the guy, and I talked to several people, and their consensus was, why don't you fire a warning shot? We had a lot of rules. And I didn't want to warn the guy. I wanted to get rid of him because I saw him as the enemy. After having a couple of these conversations, I saw out of the corner of my eye a rocket come off the street, and that rocket passed maybe 4 feet over our heads and confirmed that he was a terrorist.
The
U.S. and the U.K. struck the Houthis again. Not long after last night's initial 60 strikes, the two launched 12 more strikes, with Lieutenant General Douglas Sims saying that he hopes the Houthis don't retaliate because, quote, we simply are not going to be messed with here. Though the Houthis have already fired one anti-ship missile in retaliation this morning, but they missed. And the U.S. believes they've degraded the Houthis' abilities enough that they won't be able to do any more large-scale attacks like they had on Tuesday. But follow to stay in the loop.
Is NASA's mysterious space plane carrying a dangerous weapon? Officially, the X-37B is an orbital test vehicle that is capable of staying aloft for years at a time. The plane, which looks like a miniature space shuttle, flies at an altitude between 110 and 500 miles and is tasked with testing out next-generation technologies. Yet the full nature of its missions remains classified, not to mention what it's carrying in its cargo bay. This secrecy has led one Russian defense contractor to claim that it is really a nuclear bomber. But is there any truth to this? While the X-37B's cargo bay is only about the size of the bed of a pickup truck, nuclear warheads such as the W-80 could indeed fit inside it. But that doesn't mean it's a nuclear bomber. You see, despite being able to fly at high altitudes, it can be easily tracked by Russian early warning radar systems. And even if it did manage to avoid Russian radar, it would still be visible from the ground, making these nuclear claims highly unlikely.
You have a family, I have a family. Your brother kills my son. So what do? I come and I kill your father and your cousin. And then you think, well, I killed your father and your cousin. I'm going to come back and I'm going to kill 4 of your people. And then I come back and say, yeah, no problem. It's 16 of you this time. And then you come back and you say, 16, eh? Let's try for 32. And so this is what happens. This is actually why justice systems are set up, by the way. There's a bunch of reasons justice systems are set up. And one is to punish the guilty. That's one. The other is to have the guilty repent. That's 2. To maintain social order. That's 3. Here's another one that no one ever thinks about. It's to alleviate you from the responsibility of revenge. That's what it's for. Because otherwise, what happens? You kill 1, I kill 2. You kill 4, I kill 8. You kill 16. And soon, everyone's at war.
As a teenager, he had a flourishing career as a radio actor known for his impersonations. He was also valedictorian of his high school class and was fluent in 12 languages. He graduated from Columbia University at age 19 and earned a master's degree from Yale at 21. His name was Sorrel Book, and before the world knew him as the scheming and corrupt boss hog on the Dukes of Hazzard, he served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War as a counterintelligence officer. His specialty was interrogating captured Korean and Chinese soldiers, reviewing transmissions between China and Korea, and debriefing returned and escaped American prisoners of war. He was also a topology expert, analyzing terrain that was favorable for advancing versus defending, a critical role during the war. I'm just an ordinary guy from Buffalo, is all he would say about his time in the U.S. Army.
And that was the military shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the motivational shorts.
I asked for strength, and God gave me difficulties to make me strong. I asked for wisdom, and God gave me problems to solve. I asked for courage, and God gave me dangers to overcome. I asked for love, and God gave me troubled people to help. My prayers were answered.
When you said, I'm all in, were you really all in? Let me tell you what the cost of being all in is. Early mornings, late nights, being misunderstood, having very few friends, being your own cheerleader. Are you those things? People always talk about, man, I'm a hard worker. Everybody in this room is a hard worker. That's not going to separate you from anybody else. What are you working hard on? People always look for one thing for the other. Oh, you got to work smarter and not harder. No, you got to work smarter and you got to work harder.
If you stay in bed, if you stay on the couch, if you stay in your comfort zone, if you only do what is easy, your life will be hard. But if you do what is hard, if you get up, if you grind, if you are relentless, if you work as hard as possible, when other people are slacking off, your life will be easy.
I'm not scared that some kid's gonna take my spot. If he does, he's gonna have to do it with sweat,
He's going to have to do it with tears. He's going to have to do it with blood. He is going to have to get up at 2:30 in the morning. If he can get up every day at 2:30, he deserves to take my spot. Some people are taking your spot, and they shouldn't take it, but because you're average, it's easy to take your spot. It's easy. It's easy to beat you. Why? You average. Everybody wants to be a beast. Until it's time to do a beast.
We're not on this stage just because of talent or ability. We're up here because of 4 a.m. We're up here because of 2-a-days or 5-a-days. We're up here because we had a dream and let nothing stand in our way. If anything tried to bring us down, we used it to make us stronger. We were never satisfied, never finished, will never be retired. My high school English teacher, Mr. Fisk, I actually paid attention one time in class, and he said, he had this beautiful quote, and it read, "Rest at the end, not in the middle." And I took that to heart. I believe there's time for resting at the end, but for me, that time is not now. Thank you for this tremendous honor in acknowledging my basketball career, but I'm far from done. My next dream is to be honored one day for inspiring the next generation of athletes to have a dream, sacrifice for it, and never, ever rest in the middle.
There's this thing about people, and they talk about manifesting. It's fucking real, man. When you figure out who you are and what you want to do, and you devote your life to it like a maniac, like you're all in on this thing, and you manifest, most of these people end up doing what they say they're going to do and being who they say they're going to become. And there's no excuses. There's no fucking days off. There's no not willing to grind, and everybody's against me, and this didn't happen for me because of this and that, and all this whining and put the ass bullshit that a lot of people do these days. There's these people who dive in and they're hardcore and they're focused and they know what they want. They know who they are, and they lay out these short-term goals and this roadmap on how to get there. Most of those people make it.
A person's character is not judged when they ride the wave of success, when everyone chants their name and you want to be their friend. No, your character is put to the test when your back is against the wall. Failure has made me who I am today. Failure gives you two choices. You stay down or you get up. Well, I'm up and I am fired up because I have figured it out. And I can stay down or I can get my ass up, and I'm in the getting up business.
We were playing against the Lakers, Tom, and we were out here in LA. So the game was at 7. I said, I'm going to get there at 3 o'clock, and I want to make sure I make 400 made shots before I go back into the room, and then I sit in the sauna and I get ready for the game. And as I'm walking onto the court, who do I see? I see Kobe Bryant, already working out. So once I set my foot across that line, I started working out. So I worked out for a good hour and a half. And when I came off, after I was done, I sat down, and of course I still hear the ball bouncing. I look down, I'm like, this guy's still working out. And I sit there and I unlace my shoes. I'm like, I want to see how long this goes. So I sit out there and watch. 25 minutes. And he got done. That game, he drops 40 on us. And after the game is over, I'm like, I have to ask this guy. Like, I have to understand why he works like that. Right. So after the game is over, I'm like, hey, Kobe, like, why were you in the gym for so long? He's like, because I saw you come in. And I wanted you to know that it doesn't matter how hard you work, that I'm willing to work harder than you.
It's unbelievable how little genuine encouragement many people need, and how they had none. No one ever said to them and meant it, it's not okay for you to be a weak loser. It's not okay. And the reason it's not okay is because you could be way more than that. And it's a crime, an ethical crime, for you to allow all that necessary potential to go to waste. It hurts you. It hurts your family. It hurts the world. Really, really, it does. And people think, oh, okay, I get it.
Anything that annoys you is teaching you patience. Anyone who abandons you is teaching you how to stand up on your own 2 feet. Anything that angers you is teaching you forgiveness and compassion. Anything that has power over you is teaching you how to take your power back. Anything you hate is teaching you unconditional love. Anything you fear is teaching you courage to overcome it. Anything you can't control is teaching you how to let go.
And that was the motivational shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now something a little bit different. This is called the aviation shorts, and we'll see how I like it. And if I like it, well, I'll keep it. And if I don't, it'll be done.
Lieutenant Alaska, we're declaring emergency. We're descending down to 10,000.
Alaska 1282, roger. Descend and maintain 10,000. And when able, give me the nature of the emergency and your intentions.
We just depressurized, descend and maintain 10,000, and we need to return back to Portland. We need to deserve. We've declared an emergency. And Portland, Alaska 1282, we are ready for the approach, and we'd like to do the approach.
Alaska 1282, Portland tower, wind 160 F11, runway 28 left, clear connect.
Settle in at runway 28 left, Alaska 1282.
Bird 1850, we got both engines shut down. Should we start? Affirmative. Thanks. Bird 1850, do you know what our sequence is? Links 1850, you're number 4 in line. We got weather, miles of trail, so this will be a few minutes. All right, thank you. Tower Spirit 1808, do you mind just listing off the next 10 departures? No, there's no way we're doing that. Please stop asking what your sequence is. We don't have one for you right now. You're going to go when you're next. You got it? Well, I'm sorry you're upset, but it's imperative that we understand when we're departing for our fuel. Okay, well, if you don't have fuel when you get up to depart, we will take you somewhere else. Understood. We're going to declare a medical emergency. We need to proceed directly into the airport. When you have a chance, can you give me the info?
We have a child in the back of the aircraft. Looks like he's having possibly a seizure. He's going limp right now. We have a nurse in the back looking at him.
When able, I need your gate number, and do you have the age and sex of the child?
No, I'll get you that info, and we're going to gate 56.
Plan on right base, 5 miles DME for runway 22 visual.
Okay, thank you. We'll plan on right base. A child on board. He's 3 years old, and it's a male.
You want medic at the gate, correct?
Absolutely.
You pitch at 730, cross 28 right, hold short, runway 28 left. At a 1390, go around.
Go around, United 1380.
At 1390, go around.
Go around, United 1390.
At 1390, contact NorCal 1351.
1390, you guys got to do better than this. That's twice.
All right, talk to NorCal about that.
NorCal, United 1390, with you again on the miss. 2100 for 31.
Yeah, the 1390 NorCal departure, climb maintain 5,000.
5,000, United 1390. What's going on? That's twice. This is unacceptable. Come on, well, let's not do this again.
1390, contact approach 135.65.
3565, United 1390. Hope to not talk to you again.
Blue Street, 5509er, just heads up that traffic passing below you, flight of 6 F-35.
5509, traffic's in sight, too close for missile, switch to gun.
Hey, that might be the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, man.
4817, we are declaring an emergency. We have a situation here where a suspicious person has an item that looks like an explosive device. There's a suspicious, somebody has something suspicious? Yes, in our aircraft, and we are landing right now. Okay, got it. Okay, we're planning to turn off the runway, and then we will plan to evacuate. Okay, not a problem.
We are in a dive here, signature. Yeah, we're at a 26,000 feet. We are in a vertical dive. Not a dive yet, but we've lost vertical control of our airplane. Yeah, we got it back under control. We're at 24,000 feet, kind of stabilized.
Alaska 261, you over here with me yet, sir? Plane hit Ernest, sir, and he just hit the water. Yes, sir, he hit the water. He's down.
I've got a serious situation here. My pilot on incoherent. I have no idea how to fly the airplane, but I'm in 9100.
Roger, what's your position?
I have no idea. I see the coast in front of me.
Do you know how to operate the transponder? Can you squawk 7700? What was the situation with the pilot?
He is incoherent. He is out.
Sarah, did you tell the other 40 on the monitor ground or just stay with you?
Just ask me. You don't want to talk to him. He's cranky this morning.
Stay with you then. Get more coffee.
We're all cranky this morning.
Emergency vehicles, Southwest 6013, Captain, 47-year-old male. En route, he started to feel some stomach pain, and then probably about maybe 5 or so minutes later, fainted or became incapacitated in some sort, and then About maybe 60 seconds later, he came back to. We had him on oxygen. He's been in the back with a nurse since then. So we're going to get air stairs up, hopefully here as quickly as we can, and then he needs to get on an ambulance.
And that was the aviation shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the daily laws for January the 19th.
January 19th. Listen to your inner authority. You are here not merely to gratify your impulses and consume what others have made, but to make and contribute as well, to serve a higher purpose. To serve this higher purpose, you must cultivate what is unique about you. Stop listening so much to the words and opinions of others, telling you who you are and what you should like and dislike. Judge things and people for yourself. Question what you think and why you feel a certain way. Know yourself thoroughly, your innate tastes and inclinations, the fields that naturally attract you. Work every day on improving those skills that mesh with your unique spirit and purpose. Add to the needed diversity of culture by creating something that reflects your uniqueness. Embrace what makes you different. Not following this course is the real reason you feel depressed at times. Moments of depression are a call to listen again to your inner authority. Daily law. Reflect on those moments in life when you were active, followed your own path, and those moments when you were passive, followed what others wanted. Compare the emotions you experienced. The Laws of Human Nature, Chapter 15. Make them want to follow you. The Law of Fickleness.
And that was the Daily Laws by Robert Greene for January the 19th. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
Our job in the wider society is to be a leaven and a light and a direction. Modernity wants to make religion into a private matter. So it's like a hobby. It's like something I cultivate in my privacy. But that's not biblical at all. In the Bible, the purpose of being a Christian is to be a light for others, is to be leaven for others, is to be salt, which preserves what's worth preserving, salt that puts to death what should be put to death. That our lives are other-directed. We have a function precisely in the society. The irony is that we tend to think of religion as, well, that's not about politics and economics and society. It's about what you do in your privacy. No. We're a city on a hill. You don't hide the city on the hill. You make it more visible, right? So that's the role of Christians, is to be a sign of contradiction, a sign of direction. We exist precisely for the wider society.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Ayn Rand's thought of the day. Quote, if you want to see hatred, do not look at wars or concentration camps. These are merely its consequences. Look at the writings of Kant, Dewey, Marcuse, and their followers to see pure hatred. Hatred of reason and of everything it implies, of intelligence, of ability, of achievement, of success, of self-confidence, of self-esteem, of every bright, happy, benevolent aspect of man. This is the atmosphere, the leitmotif, the sense of life permeating today's educational establishment. The degree of a man's hatred for reason is the measure of his hatred for himself. Unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little bit of Robert Reich. Quote, Allowing members of Congress to trade stocks of companies they regulate is like letting referees bet on the games they officiate. It is unreal that we still allow it. And that was, again, a quote from Robert Reich, and it's the only thing that he's ever said that's true. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we pick up where we left off with the 33 strategies of war.
Lay not in aggression, but in passivity. By mirroring their enemy's moves, they could understand his strategy and thinking. By being calm and observant, patient, they could detect when their opponent had decided to attack. The moment would register in his eyes, or in a slight movement of his hands. The more irritated he became, and the harder he tried to hit the Shinkaga fighter, the greater his imbalance and vulnerability. Shinkaga samurai were virtually unbeatable. Mirroring people, giving back to them just what they give you, is a powerful method of counterattack. In daily life, mirroring and passivity can charm people, flattering them into lowering their defenses and opening themselves to attack. It can also irritate and discomfort them. Their thoughts become yours. You are feeding off them like a vampire, your passive front disguising the control you are exercising over their minds. Meanwhile, you are giving them nothing of yourself. They cannot see through you. Your counterattack will come as a complete surprise to them. The counterattack is a particularly effective strategy against what might be called the barbarian, the man or woman who is especially aggressive by nature. Do not be intimidated by these types. They are in fact weak and are easily swayed and deceived. The trick is to goad them by playing weak or stupid while dangling in front of them the prospect of easy gains. During the era of the warring states in ancient China, the state of Qi found itself threatened by the powerful armies of the state of Wei. The Qi general consulted the famous strategist Sun Bin, a descendant of Sun Tzu himself, who told him that the Wei general looked down on the armies of Qi, believing that their soldiers were cowards. That, said Sun Bin, was the key to victory. He proposed a plan. Enter Wei territory with a large army and make thousands of campfires. The next day, make half that number of campfires, and the day after that, half that number again. Putting his trust in Sun Bin, the Qi general did as he was told. The Wei general, of course, was carefully monitoring the invasion, and he noted the dwindling campfires. Given his predisposition to see the Qi soldiers as cowards, what could this mean but that they were defecting? He would advance with his cavalry and crush this weak army. His infantry would follow, and they would march into Qi itself. Sun Bin, hearing of the approaching Wei cavalry and calculating how fast they were moving, retreated and stationed the Qi army in a narrow pass in the mountains. He had a large tree cut down and stripped of its bark, then wrote on the bare log, "The general of Wei will die at this tree." He set the log in the path of the pursuing Wei army, then hid archers on both sides of the pass. In the middle of the night, the Wei general, at the head of his cavalry, reached the place where the log blocked the road. Something was written on it. He ordered a torch lit to read it. The torchlight was the signal and the lure. The Qi archers rained arrows on the trapped Wei horsemen. The Wei general, realizing he had been tricked, killed himself. Sun Bin based his baiting of the Wei general on his knowledge of the man's personality, which was arrogant and violent. By turning these qualities to his advantage, encouraging his enemy's greed and aggression, Sun Bin could control the man's mind. You too should look for the emotion that your enemies are least able to manage, then bring it to the surface. With a little work on your part, they will lay themselves open to your counterattack. In our own time, the family therapist J. Haley has observed that for many difficult people, acting out is a strategy, a method of control. They give themselves the license to be impossible and neurotic. If you react by getting angry and trying to make them stop, you are doing just what they want.
They are engaging your emotions and dominating your attention. If, on the other hand, you simply let them run amok, you put them still more in control. But Haley discovered that if you encourage their difficult behavior, agree with their paranoid ideas, and push them to go further, you turn the dynamic around. This is not what they want or expect. Now they're doing what you want, which takes the fun out of it. It is the jiu-jitsu strategy. You are using their energy against them. In general, encouraging people to follow their natural direction, to give in to their greed or neuroses, will give you more control over them than active resistance will. Either they get themselves into terrible trouble, or they become hopelessly confused, all of which plays into your hands. Whenever you find yourself on the defensive and in trouble, the greatest danger is the impulse to overreact. You will often exaggerate your enemy's strength, seeing yourself as weaker than is actually the case. A key principle of counterattack is never to see a situation as hopeless. No matter how strong your enemies seem, they have vulnerabilities you can prey upon and use to develop a counterattack. Your own weakness can become a strength if you play it right. With a little clever manipulation, you can always turn things around. That is how you must look at every apparent problem and difficulty. An enemy seems powerful because he has a particular strength or advantage. Maybe it's money and resources. Maybe it's the size of his army or of his territory. Maybe, more subtly, it's his moral standing and reputation. Whatever his strength might be, it is actually a potential weakness, simply because he relies on it. Neutralize it, and he is vulnerable. Your task is to put him in a situation in which he cannot use his advantage. In 480 BC, when the Persian king Xerxes invaded Greece, he had a huge advantage in the size of his army, and particularly his navy. But the Athenian general Themistocles was able to turn that strength into weakness. He lured the Persian fleet into the narrow straits off the island of Salamis. In these choppy, difficult waters, the very size of the fleet, its apparent strength, became a nightmare. It was completely unable to maneuver. The Greeks counterattacked and destroyed it, ending the invasion. If your opponent's advantage comes from a superior style of fighting, the best way to neutralize it is to learn from it, adapting it to your own purposes. In the 19th century, the Apaches of the American Southwest were for many years able to torment U.S. troops through guerrilla-style tactics that were perfectly suited to the terrain. Nothing seemed to work until General George Crook hired disaffected Apaches to teach him their way of fighting and serve as scouts. Adapting their style of warfare, Crook neutralized the Apaches' strengths and finally defeated them. As you neutralize your enemy's strengths, you must similarly reverse your own weaknesses. If your forces are small, for example, they are also mobile. Use that mobility to counterattack. Perhaps your reputation is lower than your opponent's. That just means you have less to lose. Sling mud. Some of it will stick, and gradually your enemy will sink to your level. Always find ways to turn your weakness to advantage. Difficulties with other people are inevitable. You must be willing to defend yourself and sometimes to take the offensive. The modern dilemma is that taking the offensive is unacceptable today. Attack, and your reputation will suffer. You will find yourself politically isolated, and you will create enemies and resistance. The counterattack is the answer. Let your enemy make the first move, then play the victim. Without overt manipulation on your part, you can control your opponent's minds. Bait them into a rash attack. When it ends up in disaster, they will have only themselves to blame, and everyone around them will blame them too. You win both the battle of appearances and the battle on the field. Very few strategies offer such flexibility and power. Reversal. The counterattack strategy cannot be applied in every situation. There will always be times when it is better to initiate the attack yourself, gaining control by putting your opponents on the defensive before they have time to think. Look at the details of the situation. If the enemy is too smart to lose patience and attack you, or if you have too much to lose by waiting, go on the offensive. It is also usually best to vary your methods, always having more than one strategy to draw on. If your enemies think you always wait to counterattack, you have the perfect setup for moving first and surprising them. So mix things up. Watch the situation and make it impossible for your opponents to predict what you will do. Here are further reflections on the counterattack strategy.
And that was the next part of Chapter 9, Turn the Tables from the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. If you're a Democrat, a right-thinking Democrat, you need to vote Republican and become a Republican. We are the true party of government. We are the ones that love government. The Democrat Party just loves power. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the next chapter in Policecraft.
7. Collisions. Know the difference between knives, bullets, and brick walls. If you show up in the ER with a stab wound to the heart and no vitals, your survival rate is 40%. With a gunshot wound to the heart and no vitals, 4%. If you have blunt trauma from smashing into something like a brick wall, your odds are less than 1%. Blunt trauma is the worst because there's no one fixable thing. It's a whole body of hurt. Ben Sherwood, The Survivors Club. When you're investigating a traffic collision, you're looking to see if the car is in or out of gear. You're checking the radio volume because if it's cranked up, it may have made it difficult for the driver to hear an approaching siren or car horn. You're surveying the car's interior for cosmetics in case the driver was distracted from the road while she was applying lipstick. You're seeing if anything is obstructing the brakes, like food wrappers or a wadded-up shirt or any one of the other 100 things people leave strewn about their car that can interfere with its operation. Newer cars are equipped with black boxes called SDMs that are about the size of a video cassette and located under the front seat. They provide a wealth of information to traffic investigators in a collision. The SDM can tell you if the airbag was deployed and when the driver hit the brakes. It records engine speed, the position of the gas pedal, and whether a driver was wearing his seatbelt. These newfangled cars have other features too, like warning signals to help you when you're backing up. I didn't have any fancy gadgets or an SDM on my first car, which was a 1985 Olds Delta 88, a wide hunk of metal that just barely fit in the lane. As a new driver, I relied on my father to inform me when I was about to hit things. If the collision you're responding to is at an intersection shared by another department that turns out to be just on their side of the street, a responding officer from the department with jurisdiction will say, "We thought about moving the cars 10 feet over so it would be yours." Something like this is always said. It is never not said. Many horrific collisions are caused by felons fleeing the police, collisions that can injure the pursuing officers, other motorists, and pedestrians. The suspect might be injured as well, although, as if to give a lesson in the resiliency of the human body, many crooks hit by cars while on foot will pop right back up and keep running, buoyed by a wash of adrenaline. Spike strips can work in slowing the suspect vehicle down if you are in the right place to deploy them at precisely the right time, but roadblocks tend to be both dangerous and impractical. There has to be a better way. What if all cars were equipped with a remote kill switch that only the police could tap into, so you could make the suspect vehicle glide to a graceful stop? Or a button you could press that would reroute the suspect vehicle to the nearest police station? I feel like Microsoft should be working on this stuff instead of Windows 48. In a high-speed collision, the hood can fold, flip up, and shatter the windshield as the back wheels rise from the ground. Though the force of impact has slowed the car, the passengers haven't slowed at all, bound by the unblinking laws of physics. Heads strike glass, feet come out of shoes, the brake pedal can shear off, and the seats sometimes tear free and rush forward. Cops understand high-speed collisions because you get what it's like to drive at high speeds. It's odd. When you're doing 130 on the freeway chasing a robbery vehicle, it doesn't actually seem that fast because there aren't any buildings or traffic lights around that act as a frame of reference to gauge your velocity. 130 feels more like 70. Except when the suspect vehicle swerves onto an exit ramp and you try to make that same ramp too. Then, Judas Priest, it does feel like 130 again. The homeless and the down and out are frequently victims of collisions. They cross the street against the light into heavy traffic because they're drunk or largely indifferent to the 5,000 pounds of metal racing toward them. Or they use the curb as a pillow and stick their feet straight out into the roadway until an SUV splinters their legs. Some transients fall asleep in a stranger's driveway unbeknownst to the homeowner who backs over their head on her way to work in the morning. It is an ignominious end for the victim and a traumatic encounter for the driver. Other hazards in collisions? Vehicle airbags contain a toxic gas called sodium azide. According to a recent bulletin from OSHA, this gas is completely consumed in the deployment of the bag and doesn't represent a threat to the occupants. OSHA's no slouch, but if you are in an accident and the airbags deploy, I'd still open my car windows if I were you. Sometimes cars will collide with buildings, like straight through the glass doors of a hospital. Then the fire department will be called to check the integrity of the building and see if it needs to be shored up. That's a good assignment for firefighters. It's refreshing to see them out there doing an actual job-type job instead of spending hour upon hour in the firehouse developing their lats in the gym or thinking of a whimsical name for the new house Dalmatian. At times, you'll be called to a traffic collision that's a low-speed affair with little damage to either car. However, one of the parties is claiming assorted pains or is completely passed out for no apparent reason. Maybe their injuries are legit. You're no surgeon, and even a minor traffic impact can cause serious dysfunction inside the human body. But it looks like you have a thespian on your hands pretending to be unconscious in order to gun for a big insurance payout, and you get to the hospital and the doctor can't find anything wrong with the guy either. Once in a while, you'll be tempted to do the hand drop test. You lift one of the actor's hands away from his body, position it over his face, and let go. If his hand thwacks his own face, he may actually be passed out. If he stops his own hand, he's likely not. But the true test is if the doctors elect to intubate. You can't very well play possum while someone is vigorously stuffing a tube down your throat. This causes the possum to awake. On rainy days, officers scramble to keep up with the traffic accidents the wet weather brings, and neighborhood kids do backflips onto the sodden mattresses in their front yards. If a hot call comes out during a deluge, you gotta dial it back a notch when responding, a lesson learned on the streets of Milwaukee when I was sent to a robbery in progress, and I floored it. When I made the left-hand turn onto South 35th from West Greenfield, I hydroplaned into a fast counterclockwise spin, coming to rest about 2 feet from a parked car, having rotated just over 360 degrees, like a Tinseltown stuntman. Better lucky than good. If I had wrecked that squad car during the hydroplane, I would have had to fully answer for it because in our current progressive departments, police vehicle accidents are, for the most part, handled thoroughly and professionally. If the cop is at fault, the report will say as much. But in the olden days, things were different. Some sector cop would approach a weathered desk sergeant and report that he cracked up his patrol car, taking a turn too fast because he was rushing to make it to the station bathroom on time. The sergeant's reply? "Listen, dummy, my report's gonna say you were going to an emergency call with your lights and siren on, okay? Also, I drink Chivas Regal." At some point during the shift, a bottle of the latter would mysteriously appear on the sergeant's desk. Those were the days of yore, and they were highly questionable, but often entertaining. Accidentally run over some broken glass from a traffic collision? Got yourself a flat tire? A lot of new cars don't even come with spares anymore, part of automakers' goal to make cars lighter to increase fuel efficiency. My mechanic, an insightful fellow named Ravi, recently told me some contemporary models have underbellies made of wimpy carbon polymer that will crinkle like foil if you try to hoist it with the jack that comes with the car. You have to take those vehicles straight to the dealership, robbing a generation of the rite of passage of changing a car tire on their own. Modern cars also collapse like accordions when rear-ended. Folks will grumble about how they don't make them like they used to, but this is all by design. The backs of cars are now outfitted with what's called a crumple zone, which more evenly distributes the impact of a collision. If something is to be crumpled, you want it to be the car, not the driver. Everything from a minor collision to tailgating to being cut off can lead to road rage, which is the launching pad for all manner of mayhem. Road rage transforms the meek into the seething, the calm into the sputtering. The gates are flung open and anything goes. The wronged driver will follow the offender to his house and fight him in his driveway in front of his children. Fish a tire iron out of the trunk and shatter his windows. Beat him to death with a motorcycle helmet. When road rage starts simmering, we all need to suck in a contemplative breath. I'm talking about myself here too. I'm far from immune. We have to let some of these things be. It is rarely a good idea to confront another motorist with an angry lecture that we think at some level may be a teachable moment, but is actually just us screaming like a loon. Call 911 for flagrant offenders, but keep a safe distance. Indeed, the best outlook on road rage comes from comedian Dobie Maxwell, who said, "Driving a crappy car changes your entire mindset. If someone cuts me off on the freeway, I can't flip them off because I may need that guy to jumpstart me in a few minutes." Hit-and-run collisions showcase how vital paint chips and glass are as evidence because of their distinctive chemical compositions. Both can potentially tell you the make and model of the striking vehicle. Tire tracks will give you the size of the vehicle and the load and make of the tire. Experts can usually say that this particular tire track was made by this particular tire on this particular car. Once you find hit-and-run vehicles and the corresponding drivers, you'll hear all sorts of excuses. They may claim they weren't driving at all. They lent the car to a friend. Which friend? Oh, hard to say. They lend their vehicle out so frequently. Could be any number of people. Playing along, you ask for the names and phone numbers of these beneficiaries of their largesse, and they suddenly get all vague and elusive, as if you asked for the contact information for the Society of Druids. Another common move for hit-and-run suspects is to claim their vehicle was stolen and the thief must have been the one who caused the accident. Maybe. According to recent FBI statistics, a car is stolen in the United States every 44 seconds, and people driving stolen autos rarely stop and check on the welfare of people or vehicles they've just struck. But a telltale indicator of deception is when the reporting party stumbles over simple details like when they last drove their car and whether it was taken with keys. Every so often, you find yourself asking what their stolen car is doing, sitting right there in their driveway. If the offending motorist is accused of hitting a pedestrian, the excuse of, "I thought I hit a deer," is commonplace, despite the fact that the concrete slums where this particular accident occurred haven't seen a deer since people hunted them with spears. Or they'll say they might have hit some road debris, or an especially nasty pothole. These excuses might fly with an elderly driver or someone operating a big rig, but nearly everyone else is lying and doing so with stunning audacity. There are documented accounts of hit-and-run drivers who flee an accident scene, go home, and park in their garage, all the while with the victim wedged in their windshield. Makes it harder to claim they didn't notice. Or maybe they'll claim, "Hey, I recently bought the car and it just came like that, with a human being on the hood." Wondering why your car insurance rates are so high? Insurance companies have to jack up your bill to recoup their losses from insurance fraud. Such fraud includes organized rings of hustlers who stage phony auto accidents in order to collect benefits. The classic hoax goes down in a parking lot. One pedestrian will pretend to be hit by a car backing out of a spot. He'll slap the car dramatically and collapse to the ground with a series of medical woes. Someone else who pretends not to know the first person but is really an accomplice will serve as a convenient witness. This scheme often targets the elderly who are more vulnerable to being swindled. But other false accident claims are more spur of the moment. Take, for instance, a collision involving a municipal bus. Knowing the city has deep pockets, passers-by have been known to actually climb inside the damaged bus through a window so they can claim to be injured passengers and fish for a settlement. Auto accidents are the place where tragedies live. I remember a car crushing an 11-year-old boy who darted into traffic while playing tag with his friends. He was on a stretcher with a neck brace, his face a mask of blood, staring at the ambulance ceiling, eyes shot through with panic, as if the familiar, safe world he had known moments ago had spun away. Or the two-car fatal where one of the victims was a college student in a vehicle with a bumper sticker that said, "Dare to Dream." Or the intoxicated driver who crashed through the backyard of an apartment complex, killing a woman and her infant daughter and critically injuring 2 other children. He just had 2 beers, the driver later claimed. Just 2 beers. But sometimes you're not quite sure if you're looking at a tragedy. I recall responding to a fatal traffic accident where a T-bone crash left one driver dead with a shattered neck. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and maybe he was just getting off work. But I looked closer and saw the dope packaged for sale scattered around the passenger compartment of his car. Noted the electronic monitoring bracelet on his leg I later learned was due to his parole for armed robbery. Took in the tattoos. Mob, short for money over bitches, and the cocaine 8-ball inked on his forearm. He just got off work all right from his job as a drug dealer, and he wrecked because he blew a stop sign at 70 trying to evade the squad car he thought was going to pull him over. You wonder if this still meets the definition of tragedy. Perhaps in some loose sense. A traffic collision has you stuck in traffic on the freeway and you're fuming. Now you're going to be late to work or to your appointment. But it's good to keep in mind the title of the classic children's book by Margot Zemock, based on a Yiddish folk tale. It could always be worse. How about you're on the interstate and a big rig filled with live chickens has toppled over, blocking 3 lanes of traffic, and the even bigger rig needed to get it right side up is also stuck in the same traffic jam? Or what if another large commercial truck spills its load? Its cargo? Nails. I have encountered both of these incidents on my morning commute. Things could always be worse.
And that was Chapter 7, Collisions, from Policecraft by Adam Plantinga. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States. Today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to be honest, smart, and beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.